Stop being weak. Stop being a coward. These are phrases that plagued my mind from an early age. I feel it's pretty normal to compare ourselves to the people we grew up around. I'm the youngest of three boys and grew up in a pretty masculine environment. I watched men around me run at dangerous situations without even seeming to bat an eyelid. I felt such internal struggle when faced with anything outside of my comfort zone. I'll never forget this moment. At the age of 9, I walked up to my mum and I asked her if I could start the sport of boxing. She laughed when I asked that question because prior to that day, I showed absolutely no signs of becoming a fighter. I was by far the softest one in the family and often got shamed for that. I actually think that's what drove me to ask my mum that question. I wanted men around me to respect me, to see me as their equal, and I wanted their acceptance. My mum reluctantly said yes, a bit of a sliding doors moment in my life. A couple of days later, we'll go into my first boxing session. I had never felt fear like this. Genuine sickness in my guts. I don't know what it was, but I kept my mouth shut. Everything inside of me wanted to yell to my mum to tell her to turn the car around and go home. But I kept my mouth shut. I entered the boxing gym and I saw these giants, these men that I desperately wanted to be like. Often the men that I saw on my screens and TV at home or on the movies that I often watched. I fell in love with the sport almost instantly. I think what I realized when I was writing this talk, I actually fell in love with the feeling of facing fear head on and winning the battle against it. I got back into the car after my first boxing session, and for the first time in my life, I feel like I won the battle against fear. I shedded my skin just a little bit and grew into a better version of myself. After 20 years of doing boxing, I've traveled the world. I've represented Australia on a number of different occasions at some of the biggest events in the world. I've learned so many things about myself, about the world. One of the biggest things I've learned from my professional athletic career, if you want to grow as a human, go to the places you feel most uncomfortable. Just like that moment when I was 9 years old, facing a fear and feeling like I grew into a better version of myself, I was hooked on that feeling. At the start of 2019, in a hope to get closer to an Olympic gold medal, I started this uncomfortable challenge series. One challenge per month to push myself out of my comfort zone. The inspiration behind it came off the back of a 3-day boot camp run by the Australian Army, the Commando Regiment, the Special Forces. We heard from the Commando Regiment team. We also heard from past Olympic gold medalists. They tested us mentally, physically, emotionally. It was genuinely a grueling 3 days. But the biggest thing I took from that, if I want to be an Olympic gold medalist, I need to go to the places I feel most uncomfortable. So the following month, the start of 2019, I began my first uncomfortable challenge. The first few challenges were relatively easy, going to the movies by myself or going on a date with a girl who didn't speak any English, where we just had to make up conversation through movement or the game of charades. But one of my favorite uncomfortable challenges come within the first year. I set out on a mission to mend the relationship with my dad. Our relationship was never bad to the point that we weren't speaking, but it was definitely pretty fragile for a number of different reasons. I think my dad overall was just worried about the direction I was going in, as boxing wasn't a certainty. He was scared about the people I was hanging around with, and he just wanted me to be safe. I took that as my dad not supporting me, not seeing me, and not loving me. Right before his birthday, I wrote him a card. On the card it said, "I miss my dad. Can we go have coffee and talk about what's really going on for us?" Once again, walking up to him to deliver him that letter, I felt that fear in my gut. As I gave him that letter and watched his bottom lip quiver, as it often does when faced with an emotional situation, I knew I was doing the right thing. Me and my dad went and spoke about what was really going on for us. We opened up our hearts to one another. We were completely vulnerable. We shared tears. The biggest thing though, we shared a massive hug at the end. How often are we putting off hard conversations with people we want in our life because of that uncomfortable nature of the conversation? I'm so grateful I bit the bullet and had that conversation with my dad because our relationship since has never been better. I felt so inspired leaving that conversation and genuinely felt the impact that the uncomfortable challenges were having on my life. Over the next little period, I did some pretty cool ones. I started dancing ballet, I got hypnotized, I did a month without my phone, and so many more. But finally, the Olympic year was here, my first ever Olympic Games. Preparation was in full swing. I was feeling really good mentally, physically, and emotionally. I was reaping the rewards of these uncomfortable challenges and feel like I was continuously growing as a person. Right before the Tokyo Olympics, my last uncomfortable challenge in 2021, I saw a 50-hour no speaking. I took a vow of silence. If you can't tell, I love to talk. I found the 50 hours really hard. I genuinely finished the 50 hours feeling like I was going to implode. I never realized how much I used talking as a way of expressing myself and keeping myself balanced and grounded. I always thought it was training was the thing that kept me grounded and balanced. I also realized in that 50 hours was how much space I take up. And when I shut my mouth, it gives the wallflowers in the group an opportunity to express themselves. I'm so grateful I did that challenge. I learned so many things about myself, and I feel like I've been a better listener since. With my last uncomfortable challenge done and all the preparation done, I arrived at the Tokyo Olympics. I had a great campaign. I had 4 fights, losing in the semi-final to the eventual gold medalist, Andy Cruz Gomez from Cuba. I secured myself a bronze medal, the first one for Australia in boxing for a number of years. Obviously, the world was going through a pretty wild time with the COVID pandemic. So when we arrived home back in Australia, we were forced to do a 2-week lockdown. 2 weeks to sit by myself and really think about how I was feeling after arguably the biggest moment in my life. I'll never forget this moment on about night 4. After all the media commitments and Zoom calls started to dry up, I had a moment late at night. I had the bronze medal on and I looked at myself in the mirror. I still felt so sad. I think what dawned on me in that moment was realizing that a lot of what drove me from a young age was wanting acceptance and respect from men in my life. I think I was looking externally for answers. I went to bed that night feeling pretty sad. I woke up the next day feeling a little bit better. And I started really reflecting on the journey to get me to that bronze medal. I couldn't stop thinking about these uncomfortable challenges and how much they were changing my life for the better. I feel like for the first time in my life, I was setting out on a mission to go internal to find the answers. I knew I needed to continue this series as I genuinely feel like I was evolving as a person because of them. So 2 days later, I did my uncomfortable challenge for that month. 13 hours straight on a stationary bike in quarantine. A very stupid decision, but very rewarding at the same time. I've continued these challenges ever since. I've done so many incredible ones. I ran 100 Ks on Bondi Beach on the sand, also a very stupid decision. I did a 7-day fast, 100 days of rejection. Just recently I got bitten by a dog this month, which is pretty wild, on purpose, on purpose. It was a lot of fun. I recently did Dancing with the Stars too. That was a lot of fun. Each challenge, I'm learning something new about myself and about the world, what I like, what I don't like. And I think it's been really cool to go internal and ask myself the questions about who I am. And that's where I turn it to you guys. I have absolutely no idea what will make each individual person uncomfortable, as we're all so different and unique. But I actually think it's our duty as humans to go on that journey of self-discovery. I'm a firm believer we get one shot at this. And most of my life was definitely in a way of trying to prove myself to other people rather than trying to accept myself. And I genuinely feel these uncomfortable challenges, I've gone on a bit more of a mission to learn who I am and express myself, whatever comes out. So I turn it to you. Every time I do a talk, a really good place to start is a dance class. Unless you're a professional dancer, I could almost bet my life that a dance class will make most people in this room uncomfortable. And I think the most important things when you're doing something out of your comfort zone is feel that emotion beforehand, that fear in your gut, that sickness feeling. But then more importantly, feel that emotion after you break through that. That is what we do it for. We only get one life, I think, and I think it's the longest relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. and I hope that you have a really cool one by the end of it. Thank you.